You're listening to the Assembly Call IU podcast and postgame show, the place where Indiana fans across the globe hang out online after every IU basketball game. Join us for our live broadcasts on Thursday nights and immediately following every IU game at our website, assemblycall.com. That's assemblycall.com. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most urgent topics in the never-dull world of Indiana basketball. This is our 110th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 477th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, January 31st, 2018. I am your host, Jerod Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion. Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred long after the final buzzer sounded on Indiana's depressing 8-point loss to Rutgers on Wednesday night. Feeling deflated after editing the podcast of our postgame show, I received a message from a woman named Lisa who had just returned from the rack after taking her 10-year-old daughter to the game. Her message said, quote, "Met all the guys, this pic says it all." In the picture, Lisa's daughter's arms are flung around Deron Davis's waist, the right side of her face buried in the soft outer fabric of his team-issued winter jacket. The left side of her face is visible, revealing a smile that I can only describe as pure joy. Two long arms drape around her, and two massive hands engulf her left shoulder blades, holding her close. Some 2 feet above, his hair hidden by a cream and crimson winter cap, Deron's face reveals a similar joyful smile. This is not the smile of a player fulfilling an obligation. It's the smile of a player enjoying a genuine moment with a fan. Lisa's message below the photo was, quote, "They are all such amazing young men, every single one of them," unquote. And I know it's easy to scoff at notions like this, especially after a 7-game losing streak, but what Lisa said right there matters. They may not have been amazing basketball players on Wednesday night, or an amazing team, or heck, even a competent one, but it's always worth remembering that the young men in candy stripes we cheer for are more than just the final result on a scoreboard. And the way they represent our program and university off the court, especially in their interactions with loyal fans, mean just as much as the way they represent it on the court. And I was thankful for this reminder last night. A few messages later, Lisa typed this about her daughter, quote, "She loved every second of it. It's fun to watch with her. She just cheers for them without the heavy emotions that I have. She told every one of them they, quote, did great. The innocence and joy, priceless." Now, look, we all know that the Hoosiers didn't do great on Wednesday night, not even close. The players and coaches know this too, and reasoned critiques of their poor play were warranted, and Lisa's daughter's going to come to understand this as she grows up. We all do. But how many of us, in our haste to express our frustration and disappointment, stop to consider the frustration and disappointment that the players and coaches themselves must have felt after that game? And how many of us actually did anything about it? Lisa and her daughter did. They stayed after. They made the effort. They spoke words of encouragement. They make me proud to be an IU fan. And the way the players reciprocated their support makes me proud that they're our players. Do the guys need to be better on the court? Of course. This past month has been an unmitigated disaster. But I'm happy to see that our players are mature enough to keep everything, yes, even IU basketball, in the proper perspective. Because win or lose, when a 10-year-old fan runs towards you, arms out, smiling wide, telling you that you played great, there is only one way to respond. And that's exactly the way that Deron and his teammates did. Okay, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. To my left, he is the Steve Peichel of Girls Youth Sports Coaching in Cincinnati. He's the president emeritus of the Robert Johnson Fan Club, and he is a world-renowned bracketologist whose nights and weekends are about to start getting a lot busier.
It's not Joe Lenardi. It's not Jerry Palm. It is Andy Bottoms from over at Assembly Call.
Andy, what is your bottoms line from the last week in Indiana basketball?
Well, this is not, I don't bring up Big 12 teams to walk away from what IU is doing right now, but I thought there were a couple examples in the Big 12, and got spurred to look at this a little bit by the Eye on College Basketball podcast with Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander. And there's a couple examples that they brought up of teams I wouldn't necessarily even say in similar situations to IU, but I thought a couple that stood out. So the first is Baylor. They had some bad losses early in the season, lost at home to Texas Southern, lost at home to Stephen F. Austin, later lost who is now their second leading scorer, may have been their leading scorer at the time. And since then, they've won 4 or 5 games in a row, really gotten themselves back into NCAA tournament conversation, and I think are tied atop the Big 12 as we talk right now. They don't have any size. I think they're starting a 6'5" guy at nominally at center, and had a ton of roster turnover. And it was funny to listen or to look through some of the comments from their latest win at Oklahoma on Monday. Scott Drew, their coach, said, "We're playing with a lot of joy right now. We're just blessed to catch them when they're really hot. All the guys have picked up their play, sacrificed for each other, and shared the ball and defended. That's a strength of our team right now. If you look at it, it's not just one individual. The best teams have multiple guys who can step up. They're doing a great job playing for each other." And one of their players went on to say, "You want to see your friend succeed, so it really was a team win for us. Everybody is playing unselfishly." And even when I went to their SB Nation site, there was something, I won't read this verbatim, but a lot of it was talking about how balanced the things the team really was in that stretch, and compared to some other Baylor teams that were a bit less balanced. And basically said, if when they were very reliant on a couple guys, if these men were playing great, then our team had a chance. If they were slightly off, it was going to be an uphill battle. This team demonstrated that if its senior scorers are off, the younger guys are capable of stepping up, and vice versa. Monday proved this team can play and win together without the necessity for someone to, quote, step up. Monday night's game demonstrated that balanced attack from a handful of players who are playing well, if not great, can wreak havoc on the Big 12. The other team is Kansas, who's struggling a bit now with Udoka Azubuike out. Bill Self even put the title of this article is puts the onus on himself to help figure it out, and really talked about the way that they're they're guarding Dedrick Lawson now, and the way he's trying to have to tinker with things the way that they probably wouldn't normally like to be doing at this point in the season, but they have to based on their differences in personnel. And I just think those are a couple examples. There are other teams, maybe it's not as bad as it feels right now for IU. There are other teams going through struggles or have gone through struggles. Some of them have come out the other side and have played really well. Some of them may not be able to do that. But I thought the Baylor comments were really interesting, just the joy that they played with, because that's one of the things that, in addition to the lackluster play and all the other things that we want to get on here and talk about, the kind of joyless nature that has been present on the floor from the team, when it shouldn't be the case that we take special note of a guy smiling while he's playing basketball at this point. And I think we've said that many times, where it's like, these guys seem to get excited, and it's like, you watch some other teams around the country and there's just not that joy there. And Archie's talked so much in the beginning of the season about guys needing to sacrifice. So I thought the comments about sacrifice were interesting as well. And really, being unselfish, trying to play for each other. And I give those stories, I guess, to give things that we can focus on as we look forward, to give examples that maybe it isn't as bad as it seems. And, we may not quite be in the depths of hell at this point that it feels like, but that there is, some hope that if guys can really band together, you can turn things around from a season that Baylor picked to finish near the bottom of the Big 12 and got off to just as bad of a start as you would expect from a team picked to finish near the bottom of the Big 12. And it really turned it around. So maybe there's hope, maybe there's not, but you've got some teams that are going through some struggles and trying to tinker with things, as IU clearly is right now, with defenses adjusting to what they've done. And you've got some teams that have been able to find a way through it by balanced effort and really playing for each other and talking about that a lot. And hopefully that's something we can see from this team starting on Saturday.
And to my right, he is a columnist for The Big Lead and co-host of The Hangover, and he recently sent Andy and I an email requesting that, in the interest of time and sanity, we replace the second segment of every postgame show by just playing this sound drop and then moving immediately on to segment 3.
I think the key stretch was the one where Indiana just didn't score for like 12 minutes.
We're taking it under advisement. Ryan, what is your rant for this week?
It would certainly cut things straight to the chase. I think Andy, to some degree, with his comment, is right. I mean, this team just doesn't look like it's having fun right now. And say what you want about basketball being fun, and these practices are not designed for your enjoyment and all that classic line from Hoosiers. But at some point, it is a game, and you're supposed to be enjoying playing it. It's not a job. It shouldn't be joyless, and it shouldn't be something that is like pulling teeth. It should be fun. And right now, you see there are moments where they're having fun, but the majority of it is not enjoyable at all for them, or as a result for us. And that's the opposite of the way it should be. There should be moments where, yeah, it kind of stinks and you're struggling or you get a foul and, whatever, and you're upset about it. But in general, this should be something they enjoy and they embrace. And you look at, I think for a long time, people looked at the Warriors, the way they play. They sort of play for each other. They give the ball up. They make the extra pass because it's fun watching the other guy, knock down a three when he's wide open and all of that. And, these are the things that snowball when you start losing, and your joy in the game does disappear because, let's face it, you can always say it's not whether you win or lose, but you know what? Winning makes playing the game a whole lot easier. And right now, I guarantee you, in their minds right now, subconsciously, these guys don't think they can win any games because they've found so many different ways to lose that right now, subconsciously, they don't even believe they can win. And that's poisonous to a locker room. And they need to figure this out. And the only people they can lean on for this are each other and the coaching staff. And that's what they have to do. They have to turn inward instead of worrying about what we're all saying and worrying about people talking about the coaching staff and the players and who should be here, who shouldn't, whatever. They can't focus on any of that. They got to turn to the guy next to him and the guy across from him and figure out, what do they have to do to turn this around and win it. And it can be done. This team has talent. The problem is that talent is not meshing together well. And these guys are not sort of complementing each other on the court. They're all kind of doing the same thing, and they all need to find roles that work for this team. And right now they're just not doing it.
All right, well, here's what we're going to talk about this week. Some keys to making that game on Saturday in East Lansing a game. Plus, what does the lineup data say about the impact of Romeo and Juwan's presence on the court? It might surprise you. Then we're going to talk about three-point shooting. Indiana on a historically awful pace. What's up with that? And then we'll answer your questions. All of that coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. But before we do all of that, let's talk about sleep and how a new mattress from our friends at Comfort Option might improve your sleep, since they have an in-home service for folks who live in Indy and Bloomington. Plus, they can ship their incredible Alpha mattress anywhere in the U.S. at an amazing price, and they offer a remarkable 30-90 satisfaction guarantee on all of it. And to talk about sleep, let's bring in our very own coach, Brian Tonsoni. Coach, welcome.
Good show tonight.
Thank you, Coach. So, before we talk about your mattress, I'm curious, do you have any sleep rituals that you adhere to each night?
Beer, cheese curds, and music. It doesn't get any better.
Very nice, very nice. Any others?
Various hugs and kisses.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on from that topic. Let's talk about your mattress, Coach. How do you feel about it right now, your current mattress?
I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I hate it.
Well, that's too bad. Does it have a negative impact on your sleep?
It's just really disruptive.
Yeah, a bad mattress can really disrupt your sleep. So do you have any lingering issues with the people who sold it to you?
They should be fired.
Jeez. All right, well, what if I told you that if you bought a mattress from Comfort Option and you weren't satisfied, they would do whatever it took to make you satisfied with their 30-90 guarantee, or they would refund your money?
It's just getting this old guy excited.
And not only that, but since Comfort Option manufactures their own mattresses and delivers direct, they can charge a much lower price because they cut out the middleman.
And the excitement is building down here in the man cave.
I bet it is. And even better, when you use the promo code ASSEMBLY, either during Comfort Option's in-home mattress store visit or when you order your custom design Alpha mattress online, like chat mobber Megan did recently.
That may have been the best money I've ever spent.
You get $50 off your purchase.
Nice.
So, Coach, final thoughts on Comfort Option. Are you ready to sleep better?
Yeah, that's a big buy.
Excellent. Well, go to comfortoption.com and schedule your in-home service or customize your Alpha mattress online today. And remember to use the promo code ASSEMBLY to get $50 off at comfortoption.com. Coach, any final sleep-related thoughts for weary IU fans?
Rest if you must, but don't you quit.
Well said, Coach.
Can we get some basketball, please?
Yes. Okay. Time to get back to talking basketball. Gentlemen, let's talk about this game on Saturday. I don't even want to look at the Ken Pom prediction. It's probably Michigan State by 19 or 20. They've won every home game this year. No one has come within 16 of them at the Breslin Center, and that was Maryland, who in that game hit 9 3-pointers and had an 81% assist rate for that game. So, Andy, I think there's, the assumption is that Indiana's going to go up there and lose. But what are some things that Indiana needs to do? Like, if this is going to go right on Saturday, what's going to have to happen for Indiana besides the obvious of they're going to have to make a lot of threes?
Well, I think offensively, a big thing for me, I tweeted this out today. IU had one assist, I believe, over the final 29 minutes of play against Rutgers after having assist on 6 of their first made baskets. And I think when we go back and and think about how they were playing at the beginning, there was a lot more ball movement, player movement than it seemed like there was later in the game. And to go that period of time with just one assist is pretty staggering on a team that isn't really blessed with a lot of guys who can take people one-on-one, really outside of Romeo, to a certain extent, Juwan. It's really a struggle to imagine, playing that long and not being able to assist on the basket. And sure, some of that is just guys not being able to make shots on the other end of the pass. But I think there was a definite difference for me as you look from the beginning of the game to the end. I think outside of that, that's really a big one to make Michigan State's defense work, which is very good. On the other end, offensive rebounding has been a staple of Tom Izzo teams for as long as any of us can remember, for as long as he's been there. And IU's really been victimized on the boards. And I wonder if you won't see a little bit more of some other guys trying to bang with Nick Ward and maybe moving Juwan to the 4 potentially. That hasn't been something we've seen a lot this year, but might be worth a shot in a game like this. So I think that's that's a big one for sure. So if there's one key on either side of the ball, and Michigan State has turned the ball over fairly frequently. They're 12th in offensive turnover rate in conference play. So that was an area that IU came out, again, kind of a tale of two halves or two portions of the game where IU really came out strong, forced a lot of turnovers in those first handful of Rutgers possessions, and were able to convert that into some points. And that dried up pretty quickly and really led to some of the offensive struggles. So if they can find a way to do that, I think those are ways that they can keep it closer than the experts might think and things like that. And I think a lot of those things, the rebounding, the turnovers, and forcing turnovers defensively, are effort based in a lot of ways. And I think the sharing the ball and the unselfishness that we talked about in some of the opening and really being able to rely on one another falls a lot into the assist component. So those are at least a few of the things that if you want to do things well and then hope Michigan State misses a lot of shots. Yeah, that would certainly help. All right, coming up on the Assembly Call, let's dig into a little bit of lineup data now that we're 21 games into the season. How does Indiana fare when Romeo and Juwan are on and off the court? The numbers may surprise you. Stick with us. We're going to talk about them next. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to participate in our unedited live broadcasts,
Chat mobbers,
or watch those replays, then check out our YouTube channel. As esteemed chat mobber Chad once put it,
hearing the stuff in between, you get to know you guys a lot better.
Like the time I merged Ryan and Andy's names together and called Ryan Randy. So maybe just you and I will do it, Randy, or Ryan. Join us live at youtube.com/assemblycall. I'm Jerod Morris here with Randy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. And so
we've only been doing this 8 years, Morris.
It was the weirdest slip of the tongue ever. So maybe just you and I will do it, Randy or Ryan. So on the postgame show last night, obviously we talked a lot about Al Durham because I think we all agreed that he was the one bright spot that came out of that game. 2 of the last 3 games, he's had 11 points. And, I kind of wondered how his production is impacted by Romeo being on the court, because it has seemed to me, and I don't have the data to back this up, but it seems to me, just kind of anecdotally, that his scoring often comes in bunches when Romeo is off the court. And so, Andy, we couldn't get that exact data, but we did unearth a few interesting kind of, nuggets about Al and Romeo on the court together. And then even more interesting was the stuff that you found about Romeo and Juwan. So why don't you hit us with that data, and then we can all react to it. Yeah, so I asked the guys over at the Three-Man Weave, which for those who are college basketball enthusiasts and want to hear about the college basketball landscape in total, they do a really good job. They have a podcast that comes out typically once a week and have some good content on their site. Did a really good job with previews this year. So I reached out to them, and they used Hoop Lens, which apparently is a subscription service. So if anybody has an extra $100 to drop on that or so, there's some different lineup things there. I've heard them reference it on their podcast, so I wanted to get a feel for that. And I don't think it really showed a whole lot with Al and Romeo, because to be honest, I'm not sure what all information is actually available. So when those guys are on the court together versus when they're, other lineups, when they're not, the offense is about the same. The defense is actually a little bit worse. If you look at when Al's on the court and Romeo is off, the offense is really pretty similar within 0.02 points per possession, but the defense is a decent amount better. 0.83 points per possession with Al, but not Romeo, versus 0.92 with other lineups. But I don't know whether it was what's not available or we think that something's happening that isn't really happening. We don't really know
to watch
that.
the tape still.
And maybe exactly. We'll get Ryan to watch some tape and then we can sort this all out. However, they tweeted out a few other different things. And so I kind of started asking some questions about Juwan and Romeo. They actually tweeted one out. They said that was inspired by me, which was equally depressing. That the McRoberts numbers on the floor versus off. The offense is 0.88 points per possession when he's on the floor, 1.05 with him off. And defensively, it's exactly the same. So the point was, you think, and I think last year this probably would have looked different. You're getting something from him defensively that you're willing to have at least some level of trade-off, probably not that much. But this year, you're having a huge trade-off on offense to not really get benefit on defense. But that's the kind of information that you can get there.
And that matches the eye test. I mean, we can all kind of see that.
Absolutely it does. So I'll talk the Juwan piece first, and maybe we can kind of stop once we do each guy.
Yeah.
So the numbers, Juwan, with Juwan on the floor, 1.02 points per possession offensively. Without him offensively, 0.91 points per possession. So a pretty sharp. That was a combination of stark and sharp. Drop off there, and
almost as big as the difference with McRoberts.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, it's pretty surprising. It's 0.11, and I think the McRoberts one was 0.16 or something like that.
Yeah,
and then defensively, with and without him, is within 0.01 points per possession. So no real tangible difference there. So maybe we'll stop there. Talk a little bit about what that means with Juwan, or do you want me to go into the Romeo stuff?
No, let's let Ryan react.
Yeah, so the defense is basically the same with Juwan on the floor or off the floor.
Yes.
And the offense is clearly better with him on the floor. I think that, again, that passes the eye test. I think that Juwan has been good defensively this year, but I don't think he's a game changer defensively, probably because he's playing against guys who are bigger and stronger than him. I mean, we've seen him get abused in the post some this year, for stretches of game.
And he has to give up buckets because he's afraid of picking up fouls, too.
Of course. So it's a combination of that, the fact that he's playing against bigger guys who are used to playing in the post, and he was supposed to sort of be an inside-outside guy who could, maybe help out and get weak side blocks and things like that, weak side rebounds. But instead, he's being the primary post defender. So that's not really surprising to me that the defense doesn't really suffer when he's off the floor. It isn't surprising that the offense suffers when he's off the floor. We've seen this team run into a wall when he goes off the floor at times. And sadly, that means that Juwan's got to play a lot of minutes. And I know that, the eye test also tells us that he's less effective later in games. And, he does get worn down, and it's clear. And in this losing streak, there are times he has looked flat out exhausted. And when you're playing that many minutes, that's going to wear on you. And you don't have a guy like Deron Davis to go down in the post and maybe eat some offensive and defensive minutes for you while you're also on the floor and can maybe relax a little on the offensive end or defensive end, doing something different. You're getting beat up every time down the floor both ways. So I just think that, everything that we have, stated there is pretty much in line with what we're seeing. And it's clear that this team's offense is terrible when he's off the floor. It really is. And when he's on the floor, it's not amazing, but it's better. And defensively, you don't lose much with him off the floor.
So one thing I feel like I keep bringing this up, maybe because I'm just trying to talk myself into it or other people into it, but what are you guys' thoughts on giving him, with the current set of players available, what are thoughts on letting him play a little bit at the 4 and giving time to Clifton or Jake? It feels like those guys have spelled him, but he's always been on the bench. And then Justin Smith is the small forward. And if you need somebody to come in for him, feels like it's typically been Fitzner as another guy who, again, I guess kind of stretch the floor. That notion. I mean, to me, Juwan can step out and shoot, certainly, on a team without a lot of shooters, reasonably well.
Who do you trust more than him taking a 3 right now?
Even compared to the other guys. So you can still have that.
Besides Al, yeah.
So you could still have the floor spacing, because if people couldn't treat him the way they're treating Justin Smith when he's playing the 4, and if you're just going to have a big guy come out and set screens or do whatever, you're still doing something with Clifton. You give some potential offensive rebounding with those guys and just some activity level, and you save him a little bit of work on maybe a lot of work against a team like Rutgers last night on the defensive end, where let somebody else bang against these guys. Let somebody else bang against Nick Ward on Saturday.
I agree.
Look, I think you 100% have to move Juwan to the 4. Justin Smith, I guess you move him to the 3. You're not going to play McRoberts as much, I don't think. Have Al come off the bench, where I think he's played really well as sort of some lightning off the bench. I think that's probably his best spot. Right now, I think he's a future starter, but
especially if he comes in and subs in for Romeo.
Yeah, and what I would say about the Juwan thing at the 4, I think the idea maybe was this year was to run him and Deron Davis together sometimes. That gives you a back-to-the-basket post guy. You can put Juwan on the opposite side. That means the help has to come from Juwan's guy. You get him open for threes, or if his guy crashes on the backside to help, you dive Juwan right to the hoop. Or Deron Davis takes a shot, you've got a backside rebound with Juwan. So I think that was probably part of the idea. I think also
along with race potentially, like being able to play some 5 defensively.
And I think also, having Evan Fitzner and Juwan in the game at the same time would prevent doubles as well, because an ideal version of Evan Fitzner where he's knocking down threes, it prevents double teams on Juwan, and Juwan is going through double teams all the time and having to find other guys. Well, if Fitzner is sitting there shooting threes and making threes, you can't double off him.
Yeah.
And so that changes the dynamic as well. So I think that Indiana went into this season with a plan offensively that has just been blown up by injuries and ineffectiveness. And it's the job of the coaches to roll with that and figure it out. But it is also hard to change tactics mid-season when you've been practicing something all off season, or running guys through film all off season on one idea and having to just completely change it mid-season is a lot harder than it sounds. And you have to sort of completely change what you're going to do. But I do think at this point, I'm not saying you start the team with Juwan at the 4 and Clifton or Jake at the 5 or Fitzner or whoever. I think the ideal would be to maybe have Deron Davis, when he's healthy, start and play 10 minutes at the 5. Maybe start things out that way and see how they go. But right now, I think definitely in that second wave of substitutions that comes at about the 10-minute mark, 12-minute mark, you need to start moving him off the 5. Maybe start the game with him in the post, but then you got to back him out and give him some room to work. We've seen how good he is sometimes off the dribble, or maybe starting on the perimeter and then dribble backing guys down. When the double comes, then a guy like he puts up a shot, then a guy like Clifton or Jake can possibly get that offensive rebound.
Yep.
But I think you definitely have to mix up the looks you're giving teams right now. And you've got these guys on the roster. They're scholarship guys. You got to use them.
Yeah, I think at this point, unless the idea is just overtly crazy, it's worth a shot. Based on
we're not tanking for a draft pick. Let's
true.
put all the tools in our bag.
Definitely true. So then to switch gears to the Romeo numbers, this is a little bit of it's kind of the inverse of what you see with Juwan. So from an offensive perspective, the numbers with and without him are virtually identical. I'm sure to some decimal point they're different, but the way they were sent back to me, they're even. And then defensively, 0.93 with Romeo on the court, 0.80 with him.
That's points per possession.
Points per possession. Yeah. So, I mean, again, a kind of equal to the difference of what you see offensively with Juwan on versus off is the same gap you have defensively with Romeo on versus off.
And, look, these numbers have to be taken with a bit of a grain of salt, that there's a lot that goes into them. So it's not just to say like that Romeo is impacting every single thing, but it's a pretty big sample size after 21 games now. And for Indiana to be that much better defensively when he's not on the floor, he has had some times defensively this year where he's been really good. You think back to the Northwestern game against Vic Law and some other, he certainly played good defense in spurts. But I do think his defense has deteriorated, and I think as his offense has struggled.
He plays defense like a talented freshman.
Yeah.
He has stretches where he plays really well.
And then he has stretches where he misses a shot and hangs his head and doesn't get back in transition and gives up a bucket.
And it's maddening because of how talented he is. I think Romeo, when he goes to the next level, is going to be an excellent defender after a while when he's a veteran. But right now he plays like a 19-year-old. And on that end, and a talented 19-year-old. So you get the things a talented guy does. You get him doing chase down blocks, and you get him, when he's motivated and focused, locked in on a guy and really can shut him down. But you also get lapses, and you get given up fast break points, and you get stupid fouls, and you get the things that you get with freshman guys. And that's unfortunate, but you had to know that was coming when Romeo was here. I mean, he has the makings of being a really good defender, and Archie Miller's right about that. The problem is that as his offense has suffered, you've seen his defense deteriorate as well. And that's, again, something that happens to freshmen. You know, they hang their heads, like you said, Jerod, and make mistakes. And when their offense isn't rolling, they lose focus on the defensive end. So that's just
so what, if anything, do you do with these numbers? Because I mean, Romeo's going to play, and you need him on there offensively. Indiana's almost at a point per possession with him on the court. You know, so what if you're Archie? What do you do with these numbers?
It's kind of difficult because one thing I was going to say, going back to Ryan's point, was this is part of, and you're seeing this from Romeo on both ends of the floor. He's having to deal with struggles that he'd never had to deal with before, and be able to play at a sustained level that he's never had to play at before. You know, doesn't mean that he didn't play hard in high school. It doesn't mean any of those things. It only means that the plays that you have a chance to take off in high school don't burn you the way that taking plays off at this level, this competition, on a team with a pretty thin margin for error, just is a completely different ballgame at that point. So it is hard to figure out what you really do with him. And I think some of it comes down to, not trying to do too much. I think that's plagued him a little bit more on the offensive end than the defensive end, where, some of the shots, we went back and forth about this last night. Some of the shots are just 4 shots, and they're not coming from a place, I don't know this, of selfishness or things like that. I think it's just seeing a team that needs somebody to make a play and actually making it worse by trying to make a really hard play. And I think some of the times defensively, the overhelping, the going for a block shot that isn't really there, is a symptom of the same thing, where you're really trying to make a play that you think is going to turn things around, instead of making the simple play and making your rotation, reading the play correctly, and not trying to jump a passing lane that you're not going to be able to get to. And I think that's hard to do, because you can see the pressure continues to mount on the team, and the way that they've responded and how quickly they crater when things go wrong. I think that exaggerates problems like that more than takes them away. But I don't know if that's really an answer to your question, but I do think that's one area that you see him really on both ends of the floor, just trying to do a little bit too much and leaving lanes open that don't need to be there.
I think it's worth noting that every freshman I've ever seen play college basketball, aside from Carmelo Anthony and Zion Williamson, has hit a freshman wall really hard. And Romeo's hit the freshman wall really hard over these last few games. I mean, even if his numbers wind up being okay, he's not playing the way he was a couple weeks ago. And whether that's confidence, whether that's facing better defenders in conference, whether it's being, the physical nature of the game, whether it's the fact that he's playing more games in a shorter period of time that are more intense games than he ever has. I mean, you have 2 games a week in high school, but he was 10 times better than everyone he was facing in high school. So it's just mentally and physically wearing, and you have to push through that. And some guys don't get through it. Some guys hit a wall and then just kind of drift towards the end. Most guys are able to figure out a way through it. Right now, he has to figure out a way through it.
So quickly, should Archie have held him more accountable early in the season when he had these defensive lapses? And should he do it now? Or is the ship sailed on trying to do that now at this point, especially when you're so thin?
You're so thin. I don't know what you can do. I mean, I really don't. I mean, can you really afford to have him off the court for very long? Maybe.
I mean, the numbers would suggest that it's not as big of an impact as maybe we think. I'm playing devil's advocate here, but these are questions people are asking.
I don't know. I think you have to have him out on the floor, and you have to let him play through his struggles, because he's that good, and he's so far better than everybody on the team that it's not like you can get an equal value with him on the bench.
Yeah. Long term, you do that. I just wonder, do you need to sacrifice at some point a game or a half to say, look, we're not, if you're going to loaf back down the court after you miss a shot, that's not what we do, and I need to teach you this lesson. And the only way that you're going to get it is to sit you on the bench.
And I don't know that that's something that has to be, we talked about this with Coach, whether it was last week or the week before, of how you use the bench as a motivator, even on a team with a short bench. I don't know that it necessarily has to be, I'm going to go sit you down for 10 minutes. But after, 2 times you take a 3-pointer at the top of the key, you get sucked in, kind of trying to get a rebound, but not, and then not balancing the floor and getting back. I mean, I do think those are teaching moments that are hard to do with a guy like that. But I think if you're Archie, you kind of have to stay true to who you are and what you believe in to a certain extent, even with the player who's uniquely talented in other ways, that maybe it's taking him out for a couple possessions and really re-explaining that, re-emphasizing it, putting him back in the game. I think it feels like there should be ways to do that are there without submarining anything that you're trying to do in the game.
Yeah, and Coach said, I think he did pull him after that play because he was getting pretty frustrated. He put him in pretty quickly after that. But I think on that particular play, he did pull him. So, okay, well, let's move on. Good chat, guys. Appreciate you digging up those numbers, Andy. All right, coming up, it is time to talk about a very painful subject. Indiana's three-point shooting. The Hoosiers are on a historically awful pace. We bring in the shot doctor to diagnose the issue and discuss whether Archie undervalues three-pointers. That is next. Stick with us. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I am Jerod Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. Remember, you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send out a weekly IU news roundup, even during the offseason. And after every game, we send out a detailed post-game analysis.
There's a high-level operation going on out there.
Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com.
Make no excuses.
All right, so, gentlemen, let me read off a tweet that Alex Bozich sent out earlier today. He said, how bad is Indiana's three-point shooting? At the midway point of league play, brace yourselves, Indiana is shooting 25.3% from deep in Big Ten play. In the Ken Pom era, so that's since 2002, no team has ever had a three-point shooting percentage in Big Ten play lower than 26.5%. So the Hoosiers, by more than a percentage point, on pace right now to be the worst three-point shooting team in terms of percentage in the last 18, 19 years of Big Ten play. So
yeah, that story checks out.
Yeah, we got that going for us. What's awful about that is Indiana was up shooting 36, 37% there for a while for the first half of the season, and that has cratered precipitously. So, Ryan, we got this question last week. We saved it for now. This is from Bill. He says, a question for Ryan even addresses you and calls you the self-proclaimed shot doctor. Taking each player individually, can you analyze what is wrong with their shooting? Is it bad technique, shot selection, not getting into proper shooting position prior to receiving a pass? He says he believes it's more than just confidence. Give us some insight. Probably don't have time for every player, but go for it.
First, I just want to say Jerod dubbed me the shot doctor. I did not dub myself that, so I'm not self-proclaimed. Just wanted to clarify that. You did. I never said I was a shot doctor. I would break down shots.
That's accurate, but all right.
It is.
Yeah, we don't have time left to really hash this out, but I think Jerod and I would both like to go on record as questioning what you just said. But right, well, please continue. So the three guys that I talked about were Justin, Romeo, and who was the third one that I think? Oh, Fitzner. I think those would be the three that kind of are taking most of the brunt of some of the questioning and looking at that. So those might be the three good ones to hit.
Yeah, because you're looking at Durham. He shoots 38.6%, Finney 38.5%, Juwan 36.5%. They're not terrible. Those are the only serviceable guys. So we won't even hit them. Romeo Langford, I think with Romeo, if you took the three-point line off the court, I think that he would make them because he can take a step in from three and nail them. I think it's mental for him. He thinks from three, you got to put a little more on the shot, whatever. He also shoots a lot that go in and out. I don't think it's a physical problem with his shot. I think that it is just the mental aspect of he needs more repetition of doing it and to feel more confident from that range. Because when he's not thinking about it sometimes, or he'll just like two dribble, pull up and fire and not sort of catch and shoot or whatever, he's just kind of playing within his rhythm, he'll make them. And he did it last night. He made a real tough one last night. And then I forget who it was against early in the year. It might have been Northwestern where he went off. And
Maryland.
It was a Maryland game. Okay. Where he just started draining threes at the end. He wasn't thinking about it. And when he is catching it, stepping up, and he knows he's behind the three-point line, you just see him miss them. And to me, it's not something functional with his shot. I think it's just the mental thing of I'm behind the three-point line. This is a different shot. It's no different than shooting anywhere else on the court. And you see him with the confidence with which he'll take a step in and nail a jumper from inside. I mean, his mid-range game is fantastic. So I really do think it's a mental thing with him. So you can talk about confidence, whatever. I just think in his mind, it's a different shot. I need to focus more, do something different, blah, blah, blah.
Coach wants to know if you think his shot is flat.
It is a little flat, but I think that it's not a concern of how flat it is. I also think his shot is flatter from 3 than it is from 2. I think it's more of a line drive. I think he doesn't get the same lift on his shot. And again, I don't know if that is a functional thing because of mentally where he's at. But I will say that, yeah, I do think that he line drives the ball a little bit more from distance than he does when he's closer in. And let's just face it, he's a guy who is known for his driving and finishing. He was never a knockdown 3 guy in high school either. And now he's taking more contested shots against better defenders. His percentage was going to drop unless he had a precipitous rise this offseason. And that clearly didn't happen. Justin Smith right now, I tweeted out last night, and I'm not meaning to get down on Justin, but if he continues to shoot threes, it's going to put me in an early grave. The thing is, when he's up top, he has a huge hitch in his shot when he goes up. I've seen him shoot normally most of the time, and he has a smooth release. But right now, where he's at shooting-wise, he rises, and he's an athletic guy, and a lot of athletic guys do this. Rod Wilmot used to do this, but Rod Wilmot flowed towards the basket instead of flowing back. But athletic guys a lot of times will jump and then shoot. Good shots are one motion. You're going up and shooting in one motion. He jumps, waits, and shoots. And I don't know if somebody told him, you have to release at the top of your jump or whatever.
He's just showing off because he can.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it is, but he jumps, waits, holds the ball, and shoots. And what's happening is, as Rod Wilmot did that, Rod Wilmot was jumping and leaning towards the basket when he did that. And actually, if you have enough athleticism, it's actually a shorter shot because you're moving towards the hoop. Justin is leaning back on all of his shots when he jumps. So he's actually making it harder on himself by doing that, by jumping that high and getting that much elevation. He's tilting. You can see him if you watch. He tilts back when he's shooting. And when you do that, you're going to line drive the shot. It's going to be off to the right. It's going to be off to the left. It's not in rhythm. And it takes, even if you do catch and rise, it takes any of the rhythm away by moving away from the hoop. You want to be moving towards the hoop when you're shooting. You want to be square to the basket and jumping towards the hoop. You should land with your feet facing the basket, both of them facing the basket, and you should be ahead of where you were when you jumped. So that's what I'm seeing with him, and it's driving me nuts because he's an athletic player. He's a good player. He should be better than that. With Fitzner, I 100% am saying it's confidence, and he's rushing. He's getting the ball and just firing. And he's trying to shoot. I guarantee you people are telling him, don't think, just shoot. And to him, mentally, he's at, okay, that means rush it. Just get it off. Just get it off. Get it off. Because I'm sure people are telling him, hey, you just need to shoot more. You need to shoot more. You need to shoot your way out of the streak, blah, 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 blah. And he's just rushing everything. And he's missing side to side, which is, look, a good shooter misses short or long. They don't miss side to side. And he is missing side to side. He's way off, like a foot off, it looks like. And he just needs to get in the gym and get out of his head. And he does need to find some confidence. He needs to see one fall in a game, which hasn't happened in forever. And he just needs to see one fall. And he's the kind of guy, again, we saw it against Northwestern. I forget the guy's name, but he had one go, and then he made 6 of 7 and
foul zone.
Yeah, and they got fouled on another one. And that's the kind of guy Fitzner is. He can hit those shots. The question is, will he come around? And I also think with Fitzner, his body is kind of doing some weird things. He just has a slumped shoulder look right now, and he's not really stepping into shots. He's just kind of getting them up. And so he doesn't need a complete rework on his shot. He just needs to slow down, do what he needs to do. And remember that he's 6'10". He can get his shot off over anybody that's going to be guarding him on the perimeter. He needs to take his time. He needs to step into his shot, and he needs to find some confidence. So those are my 3 scouting reports on those guys.
That was good stuff. Coach was applauding you. He said you're speaking truth in the chat. So very, very well done. We could probably do a whole show with you critiquing shots. That was good stuff.
Well, if we want to do it, if Coach has a player he wants me to critique when I'm down in Indy, we should do a video from the Hyper.
That's it. We should. So that leads me to this question from Mark, who wonders, do you think that Archie undervalues the 3-point shot? And Andy, I looked at the numbers on this, and I guess the answer that I came to was maybe. But it's not to the extent that he undervalues offensive rebounds as a matter of principle, where we're going to give up some offensive rebounds so that we can get back on defense. but it's just a little bit inconclusive with the data that we have, because he's had two really bad 3-point shooting teams at Indiana. So obviously he hasn't wanted to take a high level of attempts because the teams haven't been able to make them. But he was above average at Dayton if you look at the data. Like, in 2013, which was his second year in Dayton, they were 286 in the country in 3-point attempts, but they were 18th in percentage. As he went on at Dayton the next year, 196th in attempts, 54th in percentage. These are national ranks. 2015, 74th in attempts, 104th in percentage. 2016, 187th in attempts, 179th in percentage. And then his last year at Dayton, they were 125th in attempts and 35th in percentage. So, kind of hovering there in the middle, and every now and then they would have a season, that was pretty good. One that was 54th, 118th, 135th. So he had some teams that shot the three well. At Indiana, last year, the Hoosiers were 263rd in attempts and 307th in percentage. This year, you don't need me to tell you how bad they are. So his history at Dayton suggests that he's not averse to shooting threes, and especially when he has a team that can shoot it, they'll have the opportunity to let it fly. He's not Tom Crean or Jay Wright, taking 50% of his shots from three. But I think to see how he does at Indiana, where he's recruiting at a different level, we're just going to have to wait and see. Like, I don't think he eschews the 3-point shot, but it's not the primary part of his offense like it is for some coaches. So I apologize for the nuanced answer, but that's probably around where the truth lies.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, looking over to the same thing, you saw teams that he had that shot it really well. Some of those teams where he didn't have a ton of size in the middle years when he was at Dayton, they shot more of them because that seemed to be what they could do. So it feels to me that if he has the personnel to be able to, kind of trust to take and make threes, then he's not, closed-minded in the sense of being able to do that. It's hard to watch this team, though, how they shoot the ball and suggest they should take more, because their, attempt, 3-point attempts per field goal, attempt, the percentage of those that come from 3-point range is pretty low. And you'd be hard pressed to watch this team and say, what this team needs to do is shoot a ton of threes. So I in that regard,
it made some sense when the percentage was okay, but not after the last 6 games.
That was a different time, Jerod. That was a different time.
3 weeks ago. Ryan, do you want the last word on this before we break?
Yeah, I just want to say, I don't think he undervalues the three. I think that his basis for his offense is dribble drive, but there's a drive and kick element too to all that. And you're supposed to suck the defense in and find the open shooters. Well, now nobody's afraid of any of Indiana's open shooters. Maybe Al Durham. That's about it. You'd rather have Juwan Morgan shooting a three. You'd rather have Rob Finney shooting a three instead of getting into the teeth of the defense and dishing out an assist. You'll take those guys shooting threes. Other than Al Durham, there's nobody you really need to close out hard to right now. And maybe Finney, as he gets back, maybe that's another guy you have to close out hard to. But if that's not a weapon for your team, then that sucks the defense into the paint. And when you do have driving lanes, they're clogged and quickly. And so I think that is what we're seeing that is so different from this team that started 12-2. Early in the year, Indiana was at least a threat from distance, and the numbers bear that out. They shot a much better percentage. As they have fallen off the cliff shooting wise, teams are just daring Indiana to shoot because of how bad they are. And you saw it; it was never more crystal clear than the other night against Rutgers, where they had 3 guys have 3 wide open threes on one possession because Demezy Anderson was fighting for rebounds, and they missed all 3. And they were all big threes that could have had something to do, and they were just off. And you could not have asked for 3 better kick out looks, and they missed all 3. And I mean, there have been Indiana teams in the past where that's like a layup for those guys, and just isn't there. And these guys aren't great shooters. And this program needs to recruit great shooters for the modern game. I'm sure after this season, Archie Miller says, all right, we need to focus on that more.
Yeah.
I felt like we had an amazing conversation on all levels.
Thank you, Coach. All right, coming up here in our final segment, we answer your questions, including one about what to pay attention to down the stretch if NCAA tournament hopes completely slip away, and why do IU defenders keep stepping aside on defense? We're going to discuss that next. Stick with us. You are listening to the Assembly Call. We are wrapping up another week of talking IU basketball. I'm Jerod Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. And we've got a few questions from our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can learn more about at assemblycall.com/community. Andy, let me send this first one to you from JD. What thing should I try to watch to keep me interested in our remaining games as we look to next season? I can't believe we're having this question on the final day of January. He says, I need something to focus to help me get through the rest of the season. And let me start the question by saying, how many wins will Indiana need to have any kind of shot at the NCAA tournament? Like, if they can win 6 more and finish with 18, will they have some kind of shot depending on who the wins come against?
What would that make them, 9 and 11 in the league?
Yeah, 9 and 11.
I think that's possible. One thing that doing bracketology does allow you to do is just see just how bad some of the resumes of these teams are. So it's a long uphill climb based on what we've seen so far. But I know even Dave from Bracketville, who's always one of the best, made a comment this morning about how difficult it was to find enough at-large caliber teams. So, 6 potentially, because most of the rest of the games are not throwaway games. They're largely against teams in the conversation for the big dance.
So are you saying it's going to come down to the Big Ten tournament? Because I'm really not looking forward to that.
Oh, that would, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to do that to people.
This is going to be the year. We're going to lose out and then win the Big Ten tournament.
You said that last year.
I know. I always say that. I don't believe it. Not for the Big Ten tournament. No. So anyway, so things that you watch for. The development of a guy like Al Durham would be one thing.
Yeah, two things I would say, and it's really 2 guys. I would say Al and Rob. They seem to me, as we talk about leadership void, those kinds of things, those 2 seem to me to be the big candidates who can step up and fill that. And so how do they jumpstart that by their play down the stretch this season that may or may not lead to postseason play?
So, Ryan, last question from IUDSW. He wonders, why is nobody calling Evan Fitzner out for getting out of the way when players drive to the basket? He says it's extremely frustrating. Here's what I would say. Because everybody does it. When was the last time an IU player took a charge on a guy driving down the lane, which happens to us all the time? Can you even remember? So it's not a Fitzner thing. It's an entire team thing.
Yeah, and that's weird because last year they took charges. I think it's a team-wide thing. Archie is definitely a guy who's going to tell you to play defense, and if a guy runs into you, take a charge. I mean, he did it when he was playing. I don't know what that mentality is right now. It feels like a defeatist mentality. But again, this team looks defeated a lot. So maybe that's it. I don't know. We don't have a good answer for that.
Yep. All right. Well, that will do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us
and the chat mob
at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And you can always subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 so that you can join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We will be back Saturday early evening after the IU Michigan State game for the postgame show. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Thank you for being here and for listening to this episode of the Assembly Call. We appreciate it. And we really do rely on the support of audience members like you to keep our show going and to keep growing. And so we have set up a page on our website at assemblycall.com/support that lists 5 ways that you can support the Assembly Call. And we encourage you to choose whichever method is the easiest and most convenient for you. One of the methods is donating, and so many of you have donated, and we appreciate it so much. On that page, you can choose a monthly recurring donation or an annual recurring donation or just a one-time donation, whatever works for you. And if you don't want to donate, another way to support the show is you can use our affiliate URLs, iutickets.shop or iustore.shop when you're going to shop for tickets or gear, and we will get paid a small commission when you use those links. But however you support the show, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Do you guys want to take 1 or 2 more questions, or do you need to run?
I'm fine
with doing a couple.
I can do one. I got to get to work.
Okay, because we had a couple of other ones. And
I'm fine with doing one more than Ryan, just so that I can beat him out. That's it.
Go ahead, buddy.
Okay, Sally's question I kind of looped into that other one. Okay, so here's one. Here's one for you, Ryan. So this is from Bob. He says, a Coach Knight reference. A lot of Coach Knight references recently. Coach Knight
also from Bob. Anybody else find that interesting? Who knows? Could it be from Bob Knight? Can Bob Knight use a computer? We don't know.
Would that be the funniest thing if he was just like trolling our private community?
Would it surprise you at all the actions of some of his disciples?
If Bob Knight could get into Mighty Networks and navigate a Mighty Network, that would be really impressive.
Yeah,
I mean,
Anyway,
it's probably Pat doing it, but
all right. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
All right, so Coach Knight always used to say that it was not about confidence at all. It was really about concentration. He constantly said confidence was overblown. Archie is constantly talking about confidence or lack thereof. Would love to hear your all's take on this based on what RMK used to say.
Well, I think when you have a lack of confidence, part of the reason is because you got a lot of things in your head, which means you're not concentrating, which means your eyes are on different, your head's on not screwed on straight. You're thinking about, well, if I shoot this, do I have to put a little more or a little less on it? Do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? And you're not thinking about your defensive assignments. You're not thinking about, you're not focused on the right things. You're focused on all the things you're doing wrong and not the things you're doing right. So I think those things go hand in hand. I think if you're confident, you are locked in and focused. You hear about that with guys about like being locked in and being in the zone and all that stuff. That's just another word for concentrating. And it's just the level to which you do it. And I do think that when you have a lack of confidence, there's so much going on in your mind and you're not just playing basketball. And so I think those things do go hand in hand. And I think a guy like Evan Fitzner, it's not that he's not paying attention. It's that he's got so much going on in his head that he's basically like he's like a zombie out there. He's sleepwalking. And it's not that he's not trying. It's that his head is so screwed up that he's just not focused on the right things. And I think that has a lot to do with it.
By the way, fantastic chat mob moment as that dude and Jamie simultaneously typed in Bob Knight, big fan of the show in the chat.
Huge fan of the show.
Nice. The only other thing that I would say, I think sometimes whether it's the confidence and actually plays a role in making the shot, I think it plays a role in taking the shot and the way that you take the shots versus some of the ones. It's, I saw somebody, Jerod, I think was going back and forth with you on Twitter, actually in a positive way, unlike some of the others. But about being at the game and like Archie really got into Fitzner about one of the shots, and then after that he was really hesitant to shoot the ball, and so I think some of that is the confidence to even.
It's visible, yeah,
to take the shot, and then Justin is the same way. I think he feels at times when teams are backing off of them, it's not necessarily like I'm taking the shot because I think I'm going to make it. I'm taking the shot because I feel like I have to. I think there's a little bit of that.
All right, I'm being summoned. I don't think bedtime went very well, so I'm gonna have to go.
Okay. All right, guys.
I got to cut this out early.
All right,
that's it. We're done. No more questions. I'm out.
That's it. Everybody's out. Sorry, I got to cut out of here quick. But dad duties are calling here.
Later, guys.
All right.
So, all right, everybody.
See you this weekend for Michigan State.
Yeah, and it'll just be me and Ryan because Andy is leaving us high and dry. Thanks, Andy.
Yep. Hey, my daughter's team has a game that they should be able to win, so I'm good. You don't want to miss this.
Well, good.
Because I'm not so sure the one. Well, it's the second one of the day, and I don't have a great feeling about how the first one's going to go. So,
yes. Good to know, Dad.
Okay, I'm not coaching. They've played the team before. She's well aware of the situation. It's fine.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Gotta go. See y'all.
See you guys.